gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beast on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor is the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. It's time to rise up. Good morning, 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 good morning. And I have some music for you this morning. It is from Blind Fury, Narcotic, and Chad Armis, and Candid Thing. And we'll be right back right after this.
Yeah, one time for your mind, let a player come through. No, I'm talking about. I said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang when we hit the time. You can talk about the South, just don't be talking down. I said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang when we hit the time. You can talk about the South, just don't be talking down. It's a hot summer day and I'm from South Cackalack, so I put the Benz away and I pulled out the lack. Fresh cut, clean shave, and the outfit to match. About to hit the car wash and try to cop me a sack. Swear to God, don't nobody go as hard as me. Only superstars hit the boulevard with me. Keep that plexing to yourself, cause it ain't bothering me. I got a car full of broads, they on bar and weed. Now I'm riding around on candy, killed the industry independently. Now I'm about to get a Grammy. That's why them haters can't stand me, but I put this here on my granny. I'ma go all the way to the top. Every time that Pee-wee on the beat, yeah, you know the speakers gon' knock. I said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang when we hit the time. You can talk about the South, just don't be talking down. I said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang when we hit the time. You can talk about the South, just don't be talking down.
Shout out to the South, yeah, that's my home. Money on the line, jumping on the phone. Music is my life, feel it in my bones. Bought a razor, I'ma pimp it out with chrome. Might hit it with a candy coat, or fuck around and wrap it with some white gold. Crime with a blonde bitch, she knows she's my trailer bitch for sure. Everybody wanna know how I came up, where I'm from, rough, gotta be tough. 10 years in to make it wanna be us. See my candy painted right, yeah, don't touch. Don't touch, cause if you do, I fuck around and drop you off at a lake or two. Yeah, and you don't really want that. Take a wrong turn, can't turn back. Fuck around, got drunk, got a new tag. Feels funny now I'm on, used to flip
said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang when we hit the time. You can talk about the South, just don't be talking down. I said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang when we hit the time. You can talk
talk about the South, just don't be talking down.
Yeah, swinging through, banging screw on the interstate. Done pay my dues, now making moves in a bigger way. Big bag, putting big stacks on my dinner plate. They see us cruising on pretty shoes and they finna hate. That big chrome in the old school like a flip phone. Interior be yellow. Seats look like they got pissed on. Me and my dogs been heating up. We on fire like a lit stove. You know I'm all about the bread like bruh man from the fifth floor. Damn it, they can't stand it. We gon' do what we do. Got a cannon and they'll blame it if you move like a fool. Steady fury and narcotic on the way to the door. How the hell we ride so high but still we stay on the low?
I said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang when we hit the time. You can talk about the South, just don't be talking down. I said I'm sliding in that candy thing, sipping good, gripping wood, wheels switching lane to lane, listening to some Purple Rain. All we do is swing and bang.
That was Blind Fury, Narcotic and Chad Armis. Today, you know, as people may not know or they do know, is today is October 14th. And some years ago, they passed, this was George Floyd. But as well, they since we have a new administration, has also made it about Charlie Kirk. I'm not saying that he definitely didn't deserve to die, but we have to stop making people heroes when they're not. You know what I'm saying? And like, yes, see the difference to me between George Floyd and Charlie Kirk was George got took by a system. I know a lot of people may have an issue with that. You know, I keep on seeing things, especially like when it came down to Charlie. There's certain things that I agree with, and then there's certain things that I don't agree with, especially when it came to Charlie Kirk. I'm not going to say he's a racist because in my eyes, he wasn't. To me, he just had negrophobia. The same thing that a lot of white people have. You know, it's not just one race. You know, I say negrophobia because I think a lot of people have phobias about black people. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of people that live in the rural Americas that don't understand black people, that don't get it. You know, it's always about, you know, I go back to Red Wing and I think about Wigger days and how people really didn't see that, especially in that community, seen it as wrong if they weren't black. And that to me right there is showing how people are uneducated and not really trying to be better about everything that they're doing out here, especially when it comes to teaching our kids, especially when it comes to schooling, public education. We really slack in that department. I'm not sure why. Well, actually, I do know why. Because we got away from making sure that every student can read, making sure that every student can do arithmetic. We got away with that because they brought us No Child Left Behind. But what is happening? We're seeing children left behind every day, especially when it comes to the schooling. And it's not just about black kids. It's about poor kids. It's about families that can't get up here and stand up for their rights. You know, and to be honest, that's what it's really about. And I've seen a lot of things about when it comes to Rochester Public Schools, Red Wing. People are taking their kids out. They're homeschooling. I don't know if that's really the best option, but I think that's a good option is because public education is not what it used to be. You know what I'm saying? Like K through 12 is not the same kind of curriculum that we got that is K through 12. You know, we used to care about if people could read, if people could write. You know, we pushed. But now I see it. If you push these kids, you get a lot of parents that will buck back. And that's just like, me and Ashley were talking about. There's a school in Stewartville with no teachers, and they go at the students' pace. That probably is going to work for some kids, but a lot of kids it's not. If you have a child that you honestly need to stay on, especially like I know people like, well, you're just getting, no, it's not getting on them. It's showing them responsibility. It's showing them how to be an adult, how to be a person that knows how to be responsible and accountable for their actions. Because here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. For every action, it doesn't matter if it's a positive action or a negative action. There's always consequences. It doesn't matter if it's if you're doing something good. There's a lot of negative, a lot of bad influences that come with telling the truth, of making sure that people, especially when it comes to government, that we're transparent, that we're really truthful. And I know a lot of people have to do FOIAs, and we have to do data requests, and we have to do, go into court, and so be it. One thing that I've really learned in the last 5 years is I used to want it now. I used to, and I still kind of do, but also I know that it's a system, and nothing has changed overnight. Nothing is damn near changed overnight. It has to take that community, that village, to want to prosper, to get out of that thinking of that all you're looking for is a handout, that you're looking for help. When be honest, a lot of people aren't looking for help. They're looking for opportunities. That's what I think a lot of people miss, is it's not about, we see, especially when it comes to North Minneapolis or, St. Paul, especially in certain areas, is that you have a lot of people that move out of there because, and here's the thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, is a lot of individuals do not have money to get up and move, or to get up and, let's say like the whole thing with taking your kids out of school. Some parents can't do that. They can't take their child because they work. And that's the sad thing, is that also public schools are also like an adult, like a daycare. You send your kids there for 8 to 6 hours a day, 6 to 8, that's time that they really should be learning. But instead, a lot of people look at these schools as like a daycare, and it doesn't need to be like that. So one thing that I want to get into this morning, because I didn't know about it. I wasn't really paying attention like that right now to the House and Senate. I have been paying a little bit, but I've been more paying attention to the upcoming elections, especially when it comes down to mayor in Minneapolis. So here is Liz Collin and Brad Finstad on fraud, and talking about Minneapolis, and a whole lot more.
Protecting fraudsters and the government shutdown. A wide-ranging conversation with Minnesota Congressman Brad Finstad. Next. Congressman Brad Finstad, a Republican who represents Minnesota's 1st Congressional District in southern Minnesota, and I think actually in a combine right now speaking to us. This is a first for sure, but good to see you, sir. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Great to see you. I know you've previously said the government shutdown is exactly why people are frustrated with politics in Washington. Perhaps you have a little bit of downtime now, which is why you're in the combine, joining us for this conversation. But as of this conversation, the shutdown has been going on for more than a week now. What is your perspective on this? What have you heard also from your constituents there in southern Minnesota?
Yeah, I think this is just exactly what people get so sick of politicians and government for. This is a classic example of the Democrats right now in the United States Senate are deciding to put their hate for President Trump above their love of country. That's simply what this is. This is a routine continuing resolution. We've done it 20, 30 times in the last 10 years. 13 times alone under President Joe Biden, and the Democrats had zero problem voting for it then. There is no politics in the continuing resolution. It is a 24-page bill, continue to fund government at the current levels. And the only reason they're stopping it right now is they absolutely hate our president, and they're putting that hate above their love of country. And real people are feeling the effects, and that's the frustrating part, that they're using their politics over their people that they represent.
Now, meanwhile, Minnesota has more than its share of money troubles. Our state, as you know well, is swimming in fraud, estimated to be in the billions of dollars at this point. Recently, you introduced what's called the Fraud Accountability and Recovery Act, or FAR Act. And this came about from the massive fraud tied to feeding our future. How would this legislation help, Congressman?
It just, this is just the farmer, simple, common sense person that I am. And it, essentially the bill says if you're a foreign country and we know that some of these countries where these fraudsters are hiding their money, their governments aren't cooperating with us as we try to seize back our tax dollars. When you have the U.S. attorney show evidence where there's bags full of cash in apartment buildings and land in Kenya and Somalia, and their governments aren't cooperating with us to get that money back, our money back, the taxpayers of Minnesota, the taxpayers of this country. So my bill is just common sense. It says if you're not going to cooperate and help us get these dollars back, then we're stopping our foreign aid to your countries until you get your corrupt government under control.
Speaking of fraud, do you think the feds will help clean up the fraud and corruption here in our state? Is there anything you can say on that? Are you hearing anything at this point? Many, it seems, are really wanting that at this point.
That's the only saving grace we have right now. We have an incompetent governor that has done zero to claw back those dollars. He's done zero to stop the continuation of this fraud and abuse. As of now, I don't know a single state employee that's been reprimanded or terminated based on this fraud. And so we clearly have a CEO of our state government in Governor Walz that's doing nothing. So we have to have the federal government come in. When you look at the Medicaid dollars that are being abused and fraudulently spent in our state, it is up to the federal government right now to do it. And thanks be to God, we have a U.S. attorney and an acting U.S. attorney that is taking this serious, because if not for them, I don't think we would have anything being exposed, nor any of these cases being prosecuted, or any attempts to claw back these dollars, our taxpayers' dollars that have been abused and squandered due to fraud.
Recently, Congressman Finstead, you called once again for a professor at Minnesota State University, Mankato, to resign. We've done quite a bit of reporting about Professor Kevin Parsnow. Some of his just downright vile social media posts just weeks ago after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Parsnow called him, quote, a POS who died of the violence he promoted happening to others. And he also said, quote, ignoring that racist POS is the only thing the Vikings did right Sunday. Of course, there's freedom of speech here, but there's also this moral obligation to serve the public, especially at a public institution of higher learning. Many people have asked, how the heck is Parsnow still a professor at Mankato?
Yeah, so I want to make sure your viewers understand this. This issue, I'm not spending my slow hours of the day searching through social media to see what crazy people are saying. Former students of this professor contacted our office and said, you got to see what this guy is posting. And this goes back to the United Health CEO assassination, and he went on this tirade and posted, I hope this isn't a one-off killing. I hope this is a serial killer. These are absurd, crazy things that someone in a position of power and position of educating our young people, this is unhinged behavior. So it was brought to me by former students, and this is just a pattern. We have seen this, constantly. Folks are reaching out to our office saying, hey, do you see what this guy said now and what he posted now? And fast forward to the horrible Charlie Kirk assassination, and our, phone started ringing off the hook again saying this guy's back at it. And so he clearly is unhinged. His political views are very well known in the countryside. His hate of Republicans, his hate of, quite frankly, conservatives of all stripes is very public. But yet he sits in a classroom teaching political science to our young people on the taxpayer dime. And that, freedom of speech, I'm 100% for it. You can say whatever crazy thing you want to say, but we also have responsibilities as steward of our tax dollars, as institutions, higher education. This should be the place where we have high standards, and clearly those standards aren't being met with this guy.
If you've been waiting to apply for disability benefits, don't. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm a lawyer at Atticus.
Representative Finstead, you are a fourth-generation farmer from New Ulm. You're one of 3 Minnesota Republicans who serve our state in D.C. Minnesota, of course, has its rural areas, big cities, all part of the makeup of the state here. But we are hearing more and more that people are avoiding Minneapolis altogether, Minnesota's largest city, due to concerns about public safety politics, out-of-control crime. It seems with the election of the mayor of Minneapolis next month, we wanted your perspective. What is your message here? What really is at stake in that race?
Well, it's easy to live in our bubbles and think, well, what happens in Minneapolis doesn't matter in New Ulm, it doesn't matter in Rochester, it doesn't matter in Mankato, but it does. And I hear stories all the time of families that have made decisions with their kids to not go to the University of Minnesota because it's not safe there. Or, my son or daughter took a job in the cities and they're living in Minneapolis and their car was stolen or their windows were broke out. I don't feel safe having my children move to the metro area. And on top of that, it used to be a vibrant downtown community where we, would love to, from a rural perspective, come into the big city and enjoy the venues, the sporting events, the restaurants, the concerts. And more I'm hearing people saying, no, I'm not interested in that. I have had so many folks in southern Minnesota tell me that Sioux Falls is the place to go if you want that big city life. It's not Minneapolis anymore. And that, as a fourth generation Minnesotan, as someone that loves our state through and through, that stinks, quite frankly. We can't have the largest city in our state be completely unsafe in certain parts, and you should be able to park your car on a city street, in any city street in Minnesota, and not worry about the tires being slashed or the windows being knocked out. Like, that should be just something a Republican and a Democrat should be able to agree on. Right. But quite frankly, this move to the left, and it's not even the left, it's the far left, the socialist left, that says, heck, we don't even need police. And quite frankly, we have a county attorney that says, hey, if you're speeding or doing some crazy stuff, we're not even going to arrest you anymore. That is not the Minnesota that I grew up in. That's not the Minnesota I would say 90+% of Minnesotans want. So this election does matter to all of us.
Great points. Absolutely. A lot at stake next month. Well, we're going to let you get back to the harvest, back to the chores. Congressman Brad.
Yeah, that is crazy. I do feel like Minnesota is not doing enough about the fraud, and we are kind of letting the feds take control instead of the state. And I do agree, if we didn't have Trump as president, I don't think we'd be seeing all this fraud. We wouldn't be seeing this Title IX. So Elk River last night did talk about the transgender policy. Now, I don't really feel like a lot of school districts, we all know there's teachers who have signed. They're not speaking for the county. They're not speaking for that, I shouldn't say county, but school. They're speaking for themselves. But there has been some school districts that have, mainly it's been their whole school board. Not from Champlin or, the places in the cities, the suburbs, but there has been from Red Wing, Goodhue, Lake City, Zumbrota, and we need to pay attention to this. Okay, here's the thing. I know it's coming down to boys and girls, but to me, it's not really about that. It's about good versus evil. It's about right versus wrong. And I think too many times we get into that hype or that narrative of, oh, well, you guys just don't like, you guys are just transphobic or you're homophobic. No, it's actually not about any of that. It's about what is right and what is wrong. When we grew up, I'm 48 years old, right? We didn't have boys. I shouldn't even say that, right? What I will say is that there wasn't any trans that were playing boys or girls sports. So this is new in my eyes territory. And I do feel like we need to have a discussion about not about boy and girl, but about right versus wrong. And I'm talking about morally. I'm not talking about what you're learning in the Bible or no, I'm talking about us loving each other in humanity. I'm saying that we look at our neighbor as no different from ourselves, no matter what color, creed, age, sex they are. We look as people as just like how we want to be treated. So I think people need to go into these spaces and have these conversations and have enough respect that don't name call. That's the one thing that I really, because when it comes down to it at the end of the day, even though it's political, it's still, these are kids we're talking about. We're not talking about adults. We're talking about high school kids. And I know they're really trying to go younger than that. I haven't really seen anything where it really is, besides the dude running for Hennepin County attorney who's got a transgender child. And I do know some families that have transgender kids. To be honest, I don't know what to think about it, how to feel. I just try to learn. I'm not here to judge. What I'm here to do is to get along with my neighbor and make sure that everybody, no matter they have different skin color, if they're older or younger, that we're all treated like humans. Even with the people that are coming over here from other countries, if they're here legally or illegally, we still should have humanity in our heart. That's what I really feel like is when it comes down to some of these discussions, it's all about people's honest feelings. Because if you feel like that against one person, against one certain crowd, how you're just hateful against everything then. And I really think we need to have open, transparent, and truthful conversations. I know it can be scary, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's one thing that I've taken a lot of things from my other life, but that's one thing that I have instilled in my heart, instilled in my brain too, is that if you're trying, you're lying. And once we educate, people will start doing better. That's one thing that I believe in. Once we know better, we do better. We should expect people to do better. That's where we have totally, I'd say, really fucked up, is there are a lot of people that don't, first of all, hold people accountable. We don't like calling each other out because supposedly what happens in the house stays in the house. No, that's how we got here. Let's be honest, those conversations of what happens in this house stays in this house. That's why we got so many uncles out here that were touching their nieces and nephews, and nobody was allowed to be saying nothing, or they would look the other way. We had to stop that. When is it going to be okay that we can literally just have a conversation and get emotions and our personal feelings out of it? Because is it about, and I really want people to think, is it about everyone, or are you only care about your agendas? Is it about everybody, or is it really about an agenda? That's what I really want to ask people, especially when it comes to this transgender athlete policy.
Minnesota's policy on transgender athletes in high school sports is leaving parents and school boards in limbo. On September 30th, the federal government told Minnesota to reverse its transgender athlete policy or lose federal funding.
It's your opinion versus mine, and I do stand with girls and our coaches.
Policies like this don't protect anyone. They institutionalize bullying.
The debate over discrimination and Title IX protections played out in River tonight. That's where we find our Jason Rantla. So Jason, initially it sounded like the school board was just trying to get some clarity from the State High School League and the Department of Education. Is that right?
Frank, that resolution was actually pulled right before tonight's meeting. I spoke with Board Chair John Anderson. He says that after it went through legal, some of the language got softened up and it lost some support amongst these board members. Now, the resolution that was pulled urged the Minnesota High School League, the Minnesota Department of Education, and lawmakers to review transgender student athletic policies for, quote, fairness and safety in girls' sports. Board member Mike Nordo says the intent of the resolution was to urge the State High School League to side with the federal government to keep federal money, up to $4 million, he said. Anderson says last year the Rogers girls softball team, which is in this district, played Champlin Park, which had a player he describes as a, quote, biological male on the team, giving what he called an unfair advantage. A few board members tonight clearly had their disagreements over all this.
This is a debate between federal law and state law, and it needs to be worked out within the courts. I don't think it is fair for girls' sports. Why? How can you look your daughter in the eye and say, I know you've worked really hard and you've trained and whatever, but it's just not fair. You know, or that is fair. I mean, it's your opinion versus mine, and I do stand with girls and our coaches.
A few people spoke at the podium during public comment. One woman says the district is playing politics with students' lives.
If this board were to pursue this policy, barring transgender students from playing sports, I have to ask, who is going to enforce it? Who will inspect our children's bodies and determine whether they're allowed to play? Who will be responsible for outing students, humiliating them?
And it's not just Elk River. In Forest Lake, the school board sent letters to MDE and the High School League asking them to follow these federal guidelines immediately. Frank.
So, to be honest, like that parent said, you know, you are going to see a lot of things of who is going to be telling these kids. I don't know how many players or I know that the softball team in Champlin Park got a lot of rah-rah last year. And because, again, that was politics. One thing that I did, so they just started the House and Fraud Committee. That's Bill Glahn.
But these two contractors, one was named Ronnie Williams. He's also known as Michael Gibson. And then his partner in this conspiracy is named Lorraine Combs. And they were found guilty through guilty pleas of this conspiracy to commit voter registration fraud. And we don't have so many details about exactly what the fraud was, but apparently they, through the Annika Foundation, submitted hundreds of falsified voter registration forms that were submitted to 10 counties around the state.
Wow.
We don't have a list of which counties received the fake voter registration forms, other than the Carver County was mentioned by name in the course of these proceedings. And Lorraine Combs, for her part, she seems to be the junior partner in this conspiracy. She admitted to preparing more than 500 fake voter registration forms. And Ronnie Williams, who appears to be the senior partner in this, also prepared voter registration forms himself that were submitted to these counties. They invented names, identifying information such as dates of birth, social security numbers, addresses. They were paid by the foundation for these voter registration forms. It's not known how much they were paid by the foundation to prepare these, but it is believed that they were all faked. The information contained in the forms did not correspond to any real person, real voter. They were submitted to, as I said, some 10 or more county election offices. And this was in the 2021-2022 election cycle. So not this past cycle, but the cycle before. And apparently this came to the attention of authorities, and eventually the FBI conducted an investigation. And then sometime in late 2024, these two individuals admitted to authorities that they had in fact committed this crime, that they had in fact engaged in this rather large voter fraud effort. And then over the summer, they came in individually. They were indicted well, not indicted. They were charged individually, and they had their own individual hearings where they pled guilty. Neither has been sentenced yet. Ms. Combs is scheduled to be sentenced at the end of this month. And the sentencing guidelines for her, because she doesn't have a past criminal history, range from as low as 0 prison time to 6 months in prison. Mr. Williams' criminal history is much more complicated. Lawyers are still arguing over what the appropriate punishment for his guilty plea would be, the range being from 6 months all the way up to 30 months, 30 months. The maximum penalty for this crime is up to 5 years of imprisonment. And Mr. Williams' sentencing has not been scheduled yet, but it's believed that it'll take place sometime next month.
So I just had a couple of questions, and I'm sure if my colleagues do, they will join us. So in the indictment or in the charging documents, the 10 counties were never identified, and we will also be checking with the secretary when he comes forward. But do you have any knowledge other than the citing of Carver County in one of the documents, what 10, I've read in other news reports 15 counties. So is there any clarity on that you have found?
No, nothing more than what you just stated. It was stated at least 10, 10 being the minimum. And then Carver County was mentioned in the context that the U.S. Attorney's Office went out of their way to thank Carver County law enforcement authorities for this effort, for their efforts in supporting these prosecutions. By inference, you would imagine Carver County was one of the 10 or more.
I just sent that to you, Rob.
Thank you. And my understanding is that this
Y'all need to go really look at this shit.
Multiple independent contractors, but 2 were charged. Is that correct?
Correct. There 2 were charged. If you read the documents carefully, and I was in the back of the courtroom and heard the back and forth between the prosecution and defense, there were unnamed others who served as intermediaries or other roles between Mr. Williams and Ms. Combs and the foundation itself. So there were other individuals who you would infer from the context were not employees of Anakin Foundation that somehow played a role in the conspiracy, but these individuals were never named or charged.
Thank you. And that was one of my questions, because it says that the 2 people that were indicted or charged were then giving the fraudulent voter registrations to people at the foundation, and then it was the foundation themselves that submitted them to the different counties. Is that your understanding?
I would just make a very slight, add a little bit of nuance to that. It sounded like there were registration forms that were submitted directly by the conspirators to the foundation, and perhaps others or more that were submitted indirectly through these intermediaries to the foundation.
Right, reading from...
And it's been made clear that the foundation itself was the entity or people working for the foundation submitted it to the counties. So the conspirators never dealt directly with the counties.
Right. So my understanding, just to clarify the chain, and obviously I'll ask the Secretary of Staff this too, so you guys can be ready. But in the document, it says that the charged individual would provide the completed forms to the foundation through its agents, and then the foundation, through its agents, would submit these false voter registration applications to county election officials across the state. So the foundation was never charged. We don't know who these agents were, but this group clearly was defrauded by the individuals submitting the false applications, but then there doesn't seem to be a check, which is our role as the committee, to find how we can provide better oversight. There doesn't seem to be a check when this group submitted the fraudulent applications. So I don't know where that breakdown comes in, but clearly the foundation received the fraudulent applications, hundreds, up to 500 or more, and then they were submitted to the foundation, and then the foundation submitted it to the county election offices. So there's more to understand in this case than I think is in the charging documents. And certainly we look forward to having more of that conversation of how this happened. So that's the end of my questions. Members, anybody else have a question, or should we move on to the secretary? Oh, Representative Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Glahn, in your observation of the hearing, did you witness any discussion regarding why this prosecution was coming from the federal level as opposed to being pursued locally by county attorneys?
Madam Chair, Representative Hudson, I'd have to say no. Again, it's interesting as an observer to many of these sort of hearings where somebody's entering a guilty plea. It tends to be the case that prosecutors and the defense introduce just enough information to convince the judge that the defendant is in fact guilty of the crime they're pleading guilty to. They don't get into a lot of backstory or a lot of extraneous information. It's very narrowly tailored to a very specific purpose. So it's not clear why the FBI got involved. It is clear they were involved because they stated in open court that each of these two individuals who were convicted had admitted their culpability to the FBI. But how the FBI got involved as opposed to the Attorney General or the Secretary of State's office or some state or county authority is unclear. Again, there were, I'm sure, through Congress or the U.S. Senate, I can't recall quite the batting order of the 2022 cycle, but there was a federal election in the fall of 2022. There were state and local elections too. So I imagine there were any number of other ordinances and state laws that were also broken. But this was taken up by the feds.
Yes, Chair Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lead Pinto for this committee, though I appreciate it. And just a small thing for Mr. Glahn. I noticed the thanks from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Carver County Sheriff's Office, which is terrific. I also noted that the U.S. Attorney's Office specifically thanked the Office of the Secretary of State as well. And just, I guess, wanted to see if you have comment on that. I just want to make sure to note that not only Carver County Sheriff's Office, but actually our Secretary of State received specific thanks from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the office's work regarding this.
Thank
Madam
you, Mr. Glahn.
Representative Pinto, all that's correct. I just didn't bring that up because I understood I would be followed by the Secretary of State's office, who can better speak to their own role in the process.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Glahn. We appreciate your testimony. Now we would like to hear from Secretary of State Simon and his team. Welcome to the committee. Good morning, Secretary Simon. Please state your name for the record. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Steve Simon, Minnesota Secretary of State. Good morning, Madam Chair and members. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you for the opportunity. The invitation to appear here today was a request to talk about a particular episode that made headlines last June. It's a story really with two parts. The first part is how Minnesota's election system, featuring dedicated election officials in just over a dozen counties in Minnesota, plus staff from our office, worked successfully to prevent would-be fraudsters from harming Minnesota's election system with false voter registrations. The second part is how our office worked with state and federal law enforcement to ensure that the individuals submitting these false voter registrations were brought to justice. And I just want to be clear here that, as you know, this is a case about individuals who conspired to submit false voter registration applications. This is not a case about fraudulent votes. And this is ultimately a case of the system working to detect these applications so they could be appropriately challenged and referred to law enforcement for prosecution and conviction. I'm here with Minnesota State Elections Director Paul Linnell, as well as with Government Relations Director Nicole Freeman and Deputy Secretary of State Julie Strother. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mr. Linnell in just a minute to give an overview of how the system worked to detect these fake applications, how our office and county partners responded, and how county and state election officials helped the FBI in their investigation over a period of more than 2 years. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that members of this committee know that I personally and the staff from our office are always available to meet with you and your staff to answer any questions that you have about our election system. This is an offer, as some know, that I make regularly to members of the Elections Committee and their staff, but I want to make sure to extend the offer to this committee and staff as well. So if members and staff don't already have my personal cell phone number, I will make sure that you get it. You can call me or text me anytime. And the follow-up, by the way, doesn't just have to be in your offices. As Representatives Hudson and Greenman and others know, I'm happy to meet in your community and do voter education events as well. So if there are questions or concerns after this presentation, this afternoon, tomorrow, next week, whenever, or if you want to know more about an unrelated election issue, please don't hesitate to reach out to me personally or to our office. Now I'm going to hand the microphone over to Mr. Linnell, because to appreciate how these registrations were caught does require an understanding of the various safeguards in Minnesota's voter registration system. Now, there are some members of this committee who now serve or have served on the Elections Committee, but many have not. So I've asked Mr. Linnell to give just a brief overview of how the state's voter registration works, basically, along with the checks contained within the system. Mr. Linnell will then explain how the false voter registrations in this particular case were flagged, and how staff from the Office of Secretary of State and county election officials responded and coordinated with law enforcement to ensure that the individuals attempting to perpetrate this fraud were caught and charged. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll yield with your permission to Mr. Linnell.
Thank you, Secretary Simon. We hope you will stay as well to answer some questions. And welcome to the committee, Mr. Linnell. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. My name is Paul Linnell, and I am the Director of Elections with the Office of the Secretary of State. I've been with the office since 2022, and in my current role going back to July of last year. Before coming to the office, I served as the elections lead in Anoka County. So for my presentation this morning, I'd like to start by providing an overview of how the voter registration and verification process works in Minnesota. Then I will cover how election officials in Minnesota work throughout the year to ensure that our voter rolls are accurate and up to date. As requested by the committee, I'll also include details about the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC, a multi-state member-led organization that assists with voter list maintenance. Then I'll briefly talk through what happens after Election Day to process Election Day registrations and enter voting history. And finally, I'll spend some time walking through the series of events that led to 2 individuals pleading guilty to charges of conspiracy to commit voter registration fraud earlier this year. To start, I'll provide a brief summary of the roles and responsibilities for administering voter registration in Minnesota. The Secretary of State serves as Minnesota's chief election official. Among the duties for the Office of the Secretary of State is the responsibility for defining, maintaining, and administering the statewide voter registration system, or SVRS. The Elections Division of the office includes a team of state program administrators and IT staff that support the voter registration system and several other related tools, including public-facing voter tools like online voter registration and the polling place finder. The office is also responsible for developing forms for use in elections, including the voter registration application and preparing and publishing information about elections. The office also has responsibility for training and certifying county elections officials. It is the county auditor that serves as the chief registrar of voters and the custodian of official voter registration records in each county. This is an elected position in some counties and appointed in others. In some counties, especially those with large numbers of registered voters, elections responsibilities are delegated to an elections director or manager. In the vast majority of counties, elections and voter registration is just one of the many responsibilities for the county auditor. Other duties may include property records, taxation, licensing, finance, and more. County elections officials are responsible for carrying out most functions related to voter registration, including the entry of new voter registration applications or updating existing records in the statewide voter registration system. The county auditor is then responsible for training and certifying municipal clerks on their election administration responsibilities and also training election judges. Municipal clerk's elections responsibilities largely revolve around serving as the filing officer for their jurisdiction's offices, creating precinct boundaries, and designating election day polling places, and recruiting and employing election judges. Several municipalities, primarily larger cities, also administer absentee voting, including facilitating election day registration for in-person absentee voters. At the polling place on election day, election judges are responsible for managing the polling place rosters and administering the election day registration process for voters that are not yet registered or need to update their information on election day. However, all of the actual entry and processing of voter registration applications is managed at the county level. Voter registration in Minnesota is limited to only those who meet the eligibility criteria to register and vote. One must be a U.S. citizen and must be at least 16 years old to submit a voter registration application. Those who are not yet 18 are set to a pending status until their 18th birthday, when their voter record becomes active. Registrants must have been a resident of Minnesota for at least 20 days prior to registering. Those who are incarcerated for a felony conviction cannot register to vote while they're incarcerated. And individuals are not eligible to register if a court has taken away their right to vote as part of a guardianship or if they've been found legally incompetent. At the time of registration, voters affirm their eligibility to vote through the signing of a certification statement detailing all of these eligibility requirements and a statement that defines the penalties for falsifying information on a voter registration form. All voter registration applications must undergo a two-step verification process. The first part of this process is to confirm that the voter is who they say they are. This is done by matching data provided on their application to a government database. Most matching takes place behind the scenes when the record is checked against the Department of Public Safety database. For voter registrations that come from driver and vehicle services, those records have already been verified as a match since the record is on file with DPS. Similarly, any registration applications that are submitted through the online voter registration application are only passed along for registration if the information provided on that application form can be matched against data in the DPS or Social Security Administration database. For voters that are registering using a paper application, the data that's provided on that form is entered into SVRS by the county and then sent to DPS to be verified. If there's a match, then the voter status in the system will change from to be verified to verified. If there's not an exact match to one in the DPS database, but there are potential matches, those potential matches are queued for the county to review and determine whether the voter record and the DPS record are the same person. A common example of a situation where there is an exact match, or where there is not an exact match, is when someone has a hyphenated last name and does not exactly match between the two databases. This would require a manual review to determine that the record corresponds to the same person. There also may be cases of data entry errors or instances where the information provided on the voter registration application may not have been clearly written. Some common data entry issues may include transposing ID numbers or handwriting, where a 9 may look like a 4. When the record is returned for further review, it provides the county election official an opportunity to review that data and confirm whether anything may have been entered incorrectly. If the record cannot be verified through DPS, and the applicant has provided the last 4 digits of their Social Security number, then their information is sent to the SSA database for verification. If there's not a match, the county election official must use other methods to attempt to verify the voter's identity. This may include record searches, contact by mail, phone, or email. There's a 10-day window for counties to review those records that cannot be matched. And for any records that cannot be verified, the registration is flagged as incomplete. Here's a diagram that shows the workflow, what I just described, for any new record or an update to an existing voter record. As noted on the previous slide, all voters start with sending their data through the DPS database to determine if there is a match with an existing record. Additional review then takes place for cases where there's not an exact match, but potential matches are identified. If there's not a match with the DPS record and we have the last 4 of the Social Security number, it's sent to that SSA database for review. SSA only returns the record as a match if there's an exact match with the data that is provided. So again, for that voter with the hyphenated name, it would not be returned as a match if there are discrepancies between how the name is listed. Finally, if a record cannot be verified through DPS or the SSA, it is reviewed by the county auditor, and if it cannot be verified, it's marked in the system as incomplete. For any records that are marked as incomplete, a notice is queued in the statewide voter registration system for the county to mail to the registrant. The content of that notice will vary depending on how the voter applied to be registered and whether they are a first-time voter. As required by federal law, incomplete registrations for first-time voters that are registering by mail and who have not voted in a federal election must either complete their registration with the county auditor before the election or provide an acceptable identification document when arriving to vote on election day. These registrants will be marked with a CID designation on the polling place roster and must provide ID to the election judge before they are allowed to vote. A voucher cannot be used to clear the CID requirement for these voters. It must be an acceptable photo ID. All other incomplete registrations are marked as challenged, unverifiable, and they must clear the challenge to affirm their eligibility before being permitted to vote. If there's any evidence that a voter is not eligible to vote, that must be referred to the county attorney for investigation.
Pardon me, Mr. Linnell, can I just ask a question there while I'm thinking of it? Thank you. So you said that if it's flagged as CID, they must provide an acceptable photo ID. So in these cases, a utility bill is not sufficient?
Madam Chair, in those cases, it would be the photo ID that's used in combination with a utility bill as an acceptable proof of residence document for election day registration purposes. So the distinction is that the vouching process, which is acceptable for registering to vote on election day, would not be applicable for this group of incomplete registrants who are marked on the roster as CID.
Thank you. So just to drill down one more, it must include a photo ID of some type.
Correct.
Thank you. And just a second, Vice Chair Anderson. But this is for people who've never voted in federal elections before. And we'll talk about the next case where they may have been inactive next, I'm assuming?
Madam Chair, that's correct. The requirement for marking these records as CID on the roster is a federal requirement that applies just to first-time voters who have not yet voted in a federal election. If it's not a first-time registrant, if it's an update to a registration, or if there's other ways in which they've registered to vote, but it still comes back as not being able to be verified, they are marked as challenged, unverifiable in the system.
Perfect. Thank you. Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. So we give driver's licenses to anyone here. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't have to, which is a photo ID. So if someone comes in, they register, they have the driver's license, but they have an incorrect social or no social or whatever. So then they become incomplete. But if they walk in to vote with their driver's license, does that make them all of a sudden now okay?
Mr. Linnell.
Madam Chair, so the designation on the roster for someone whose registration had been incomplete, if they present the election judge with that acceptable identification document, that would clear the challenge from the roster and they would be permitted to cast a ballot.
Mr. Anderson.
Well, okay, there's your problem potentially. So thank you.
So just to clarify, someone who is not a citizen but presents a driver's license at that point in the process could be permitted to vote.
Madam Chair, at the time of registration, as well as at the time of submitting a ballot, every voter is signing the attestation affirming their eligibility to vote, including that they meet all eligibility requirements, that they are a U.S. citizen. If it's determined then that the voter was not in fact eligible to vote, that information would be provided to the county attorney for investigation and potential prosecution.
Vice Chair Anderson.
Madam Chair, but if they sign and they say they're eligible to vote and they walk in with the driver's license, even though they're not, because we give driver's licenses to anyone in the state, they can vote. if they sign that they're eligible. Is that-
Mr. Linnell.
Madam Chair, again, in this scenario where we're talking about a record that has been flagged for the CID requirement, that is the requirement that they must clear under federal law in order to be allowed to vote. It doesn't contemplate a hypothetical where someone is not otherwise eligible to vote. It's to affirm their identity as the voter. It's that they are who they say they are, that it's a match against, again, one of the databases. Ideally, that's done through the number matching with the DPS database or with the Social Security Administration. It is the other elements of being eligible to vote that the voter is attesting to and certifying at the time that they're registering and when they are casting a ballot.
Thank you. So the answer to my question is yes. Under that scenario, someone could, they get their driver's license, again, because we give them to anybody here. They register to vote. It doesn't match with the Social Security number, so they're flagged, but they come in as long as they have an ID, which is that driver's license, and they sign that they're, eligible to vote, they can vote. And they're then no longer flagged. They're on the system. Is that correct?
Mr. Linnell.
Madam Chair, if I could add the, and maybe stepping back from those that are flagged as CID on the roster, for anyone that's presenting documentation to register to vote, that is affirmation of their identity. The driver's license has not been used as proof of citizenship for the purposes of registering to vote. It's affirming that they are who they say they are. So
Right.
in any of these cases where someone were to cast a ballot if they were ineligible to vote, there are also reports that are generated post-election for voters that are challenged that counties will run to show status of voters that had been updated due to the fact that they've now cast a ballot that can be reviewed and referred to the county attorney.
Okay, so the answer is yes to my question. You haven't said it, but is that correct? The answer was,
Secretary Simon.
If I could intervene here, and if I could zoom out a little bit, I just want to make clear that this is not a new issue for Minnesota. For over 100 years, people who have had not only driver's licenses, but other form of ID that can be used in an election that does not distinguish between a citizen and a non-citizen. So my mother is a good example. My mother, for over 30 years, was a green card holder. She was driving around Minnesota for decades with a valid driver's license that could have, I suppose, been used for voting. Although the instances of that are just vanishingly rare. It almost never, ever happens. There have been some recent studies about that are Minnesota specifics. But I would just draw your attention to the fact that we have other IDs, not just driver's licenses, that we, I guess, give to everyone that do not make a distinction between citizenship and non. For example, a student ID. No student ID that I've ever seen from any college or university has a marking that shows whether someone's a citizen or not, or a military ID. There is no military ID that I've ever seen that shows a demarcation about whether someone's a citizen or not. So I just wanted us to put this in perspective. Reasonable people in this room can have a different idea about how we ought to do things. That's perfectly fair. But I just want to give a little bit of context that this is not new. As with my mother, this is a decades old, I would say a century old issue in Minnesota.
Thank you. Follow up. Thank you. All right, Mr. Linnell, so sorry to have derailed you here. We look forward to you continuing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving ahead to the second half of that verification process when one registers to vote, which is to confirm that the voter lives where they say they live. So after being registered, a postal verification card, or PVC, is sent to the voter's residential address as a non-forwardable mailing. If the mailing is delivered, the address is confirmed and no further action is taken. If the mailing is returned to the county elections office as undeliverable, the voter record then must be challenged. A second card is then sent after 60 days, and if that card is returned, the voter record is inactivated. There are many reasons why a PVC may be returned, which include incomplete information. For example, if the address provided did not include the apartment unit number for the voter, or the voter is temporarily away from their home address. If the card is returned with a forwarding address, there are procedures in place for how to handle that record. Those include updating the address in the voter's record if the address is within the county, providing the card to another Minnesota county to update the record if the voter's moved to another county in the state, or triggering the process to inactivate the voter record if data indicates that the voter has moved out of state. Additional procedures are required for postal verification cards that are returned for individuals registering on Election Day that I'll touch on later.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. So I'm curious about this because this happened in my household. So we received voter absentee application form for the previous owners of my home, who I happen to know. And I returned it. The homeowner, got it, and I did not fill it out. I returned it and said, no longer here, or whatever I put on the envelope, and stuck it back in the mailbox. So is it incumbent on the people living in the residence, when they get those things, to return it if it's not caught in the mail system already? And the example I want to bring up is there was a case last year where indeed a woman got in Itasca County a ballot for her mother who had died, and she filled it out. So is it incumbent on the people who get these things in their home to return it? Or what is the process for making sure that all this postal verification is rock solid? Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. There are the technical ways in which the card is flagged as non-forwardable. So if the USPS cannot deliver it, it will be returned, and they'll often have the stickers on it indicating the reason why the card was returned. But certainly if a card is delivered to a residence and the information does not correspond to who is living there, we would encourage the homeowner, the resident, to reach out to the county elections office, provide them with information about the card they received. It's possible that it was delivered to the wrong address, or to your point, if it was a previous resident and the information may be out of date, to provide that to the county elections office so they can take a look at that record and determine if any updates may need to be made based on that information. I will talk a little bit about the specific case that you mentioned of how Minnesota counties do update records based on information that's received from the Department of Health to mark records as deceased in the system, but there are times it's not always going to be a real-time update. So if there is a lag in data, you may find an opportunity like that where a postal verification card is sent, or there's something that's sent that's not corresponding to who currently resides at the address. It's, I think, as close as possible based on the list maintenance procedures that counties are doing on a daily basis. But that would be, I think, effective use of the system if that information is provided to the county. So the more they have, the more accurate and up-to-date the records can be.
Thank you.
Which is a great segue into the next slide. So after a voter is added into the system, the record is now subject to the constant checks that ensure their data remains up to date. The OSS receives data from a number of agencies to facilitate these updates. The Department of Corrections shares a file each month with the names of all individuals that are currently incarcerated for a felony offense. Names that match with a registered voter are provided in a report to the county to be challenged. Once an individual is released from incarceration, the records are flagged for the county to remove the challenge from the record. And any instances where it appears that an individual may have voted while incarcerated are also referred to the county attorney for review and investigation. The Department of Health provides a monthly file with names of those who have died in Minnesota. Names from that file that match with a record in SVRS are shared with counties to review the data and mark the records as deceased. Counties also often review obituaries and receive and process reports filed with their offices certifying that a voter has passed away and update records accordingly. The Department of Public Safety provides a monthly file with names of non-citizens in Minnesota on a temporary visa. If there is a match with a registered voter, that data is provided to the county to challenge the record and refer to the county attorney for investigation. The state court administrator also regularly provides information on legal name changes, as well as court orders related to guardianship or incompetence where one's voting rights have been removed or restored. Minnesota is also a member of the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC, that helps to facilitate voter list maintenance that I'll talk a little bit more about shortly. Each January, the office also conducts an annual list maintenance process as required by law. Any records that do not have active voting, voting activity or an update to the record over the preceding 4 years are changed to a status of inactive. Voters who are inactivated are required to re-register before they're eligible to vote in a future election. This serves as a routine check to inactivate any dormant records that may not have been updated through the regular list maintenance procedures. When a voter record is added into SVRS, a search is also conducted against the database of existing active and inactive records to ensure a record does not already exist for the voter. Election officials can view any potential matching records and select the existing record to be updated if there is a match. If a new record is being entered, but there's already one with certain matching information, the system will flag that as a potential match and prompt the county to undertake additional review before creating the voter record. In rare instances, a new record may be added with data that does not match the already existing voter record, resulting in a duplicate record being created. SVRS has a series of reports that flag these potential duplicate voter records for review, and matches that are confirmed are then merged to ensure that there is only one voter record for each voter.
Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you. So you do this maintenance yearly. So back to the situation that we were talking about earlier, where you have someone that has a driver's license, which they can get anywhere, no matter who they are, in the state, and they go and they vote or they register. It's flagged as needs an ID. They won't go in. They use their ID. They sign. Do you go back and look at the Social Security number and the reason that was not matching originally? Do you go back and do you compare that to the Social Security database regularly, at least for, well, everyone, but certainly for people where it didn't match in the first place? Do you do that?
Mr. Linnell.
Madam Chair, so for any record that is flagged as failed verification, and specifically to the Social Security Administration database, I would say that operates somewhat as a black box. If we get a matching record to confirm that it is verified against the Social Security database, it comes back to confirm that there's a match. We don't have a lens into that database to see what it is that may be causing the record not to match, whether it's a transposed number, whether it's a issue with the last name not matching exactly, any number of reasons where it's a genuine valid voter registration, but it's coming back from the SSA showing that it can't be verified with that information. But for any record that's submitted at the time that verification cannot be confirmed, that's where that additional review by the county elections office is taking place to make sure that record then gets flagged and challenged in the system. And as I touched on briefly, there are a series of reports that are generated after each election to show any records that may have been challenged and updated as a result of voting in that election that are reviewed. And if there's any discrepancies there, or if an unverified voter has cast a ballot, that may be referred on to the county attorney for investigation.
Vice Chair Anderson.
That's interesting. I know more will come out as they go along, but I wanted to kind of finish stuff I had to talk about. So one thing that I wanted to address was, last night parents addressed White Bear Lake School Board about the allegations of this 22-year-old who was acting like he was a senior in high school. And there has been videos of him, with people who can't consent. We all know that consent is the legal age of consent. It's 16. And so now we're coming to find out there has been multiple reports that he was with underage girls.
Tonight, several parents speaking out at the White Bear Lake School Board meeting. It's the first time district leaders have met publicly since an adult, 22-year-old Kelvin Lebke, allegedly enrolled at White Bear Lake High School pretending to be a student. Raya Katene was at the meeting tonight and joins us with more. Raya?
It was a packed room tonight, Julie. The meeting began with board member Daniel Scarr making a motion to publicly address the district's actions over the past 2 weeks, including their mitigation efforts concerning student safety and the enrollment process. But with no other members voting in favor of his request, the only mention of this case came directly from families and later addressed briefly by the superintendent.
Almost 2 weeks after the White Bear Lake School District said a man fraudulently enrolled as an 18-year-old and attended the high school.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
District leaders and families sat face-to-face at Monday night's school board meeting.
I've become frustrated with transparency, frustrated with accountability, and frustrated with not wanting to hear opinions that differ from yours.
Plenty of questions from parents.
What thoughts you guys have
about changes that might be needed.
Met with no answers from board members or the superintendent.
While the investigation continues, I do not have any new information to share.
Briefly addressing the incident, Dr. Wayne Kazmarchuk says the district has carefully reviewed its enrollment procedures.
And are confident our processes are as strong as they can be under state and federal law.
How did you do your due diligence when this guy was able to prey on your students?
Tiffany Simmons' son is a White Bear Lake High School junior who she says interacted with 22-year-old Calvin Lebke, the man now accused in court documents of sexually assaulting teens while enrolled at the school. Simmons says her son stayed away from Lebke because of some things he'd said.
He was just like, I'm just disgusted. All he talked about was sex and things like that, and he was disgusted.
She and some who attended the board meeting say changes to the enrollment process are necessary. And while State Representative Elliot Engen has called on the superintendent to resign, many who spoke during public comment say they have faith in Kazmarchuk and the board.
This is leadership.
And I did ask to meet with the superintendent or school board members this afternoon, but the district told me none of them were available to meet today, Julie.
I mean, it looked completely packed. You were saying so many people wanted to talk, they had to do
Yes, a lottery system. So they only had 30 minutes allotted for public comment. And so there were so many people signed up that they had to just randomly pick names out of a bucket to decide who gets to participate.
Wow. I'm sure a lot of parents the same way in Iowa and Des Moines, because again, more is coming out about the teacher, the superintendent, the students, especially in Des Moines. So listen to this, and you're going to hear that not only was he here illegally, but he was using his consult firm. And that's crazy as hell to me. I think we need to see a lot of accountability in Des Moines, and especially here in Minnesota as well.
17 days since former Des Moines Superintendent Ian Roberts was detained by ICE, and today we continue to learn more details surrounding his background. A canceled Des Moines School Board meeting from September 2023 shows Roberts called to approve a $116,000 to the Meritism Group and Lively Paradox for professional development. Local 5's Emma Strunner joins us in studio to explain what Lively Paradox is and why Roberts recommended it for leadership coaching. Emma?
Well, Larissa, the Associated Press says Roberts indicated on his resume he was an executive leadership coach at Lively Paradox. And Des Moines Public Schools tells Local 5 this information is accurate, adding, quote, there appears to be a pattern of Ian Roberts having Lively Paradox do business with the districts and organizations he also worked for. AP says Roberts was told this funding to Lively Paradox would be a conflict of interest. Then he canceled that special meeting. When I visited the Lively Paradox website, I noticed several books with Roberts as an author, with titles such as The Power of 7-Second Chances and Radical Empathy. One of these books was co-authored by Dr. Nicole Price, the founder of Lively Paradox. Some remnants of Roberts and Lively Paradox seem to have disappeared from the internet. A post by Roberts on LinkedIn with the hashtag Radical Empathy can't be found, and neither can his entire LinkedIn profile. A search for Lively Paradox's Our Team page includes an abstract describing Roberts, but when I go to the page, his profile is wiped. One post does remain, however. That's a LinkedIn post by Price from 1 week ago. She writes the two have worked together for years, and Lively Paradox is proud to have partnered with Roberts. One comment on the post is from Roberts' wife, thanking Price for her words. With Roberts' close affiliation to the company, Associated Press says Price hired clients and gave leadership training in states Roberts worked at before DMPS, getting payments from schools that employed him, including Mill Creek Township School District.
Mr. O'Toole, for the Paradox, which was Nicole Price, didn't she come in for an in-service presentation?
Correct. There was a payment just under $1,800 that related to the Myers-Briggs personal testing.
The premise of Lively Paradox, according to their website, is to foster leadership skills through trust and accountability. Local 5's interview with Roberts in 2023 shows leadership was also a priority of his.
When students are taught, exposed to leadership, or when they're learning from individuals who share many of their identities, they succeed, they exceed expectations.
The Associated Press found the Des Moines Public Schools District did pay Lively Paradox $6,476 for Price's work and travel for a school board retreat. Larissa?
This is crazy. I will say this, is that more individuals need to be paying attention to what is going on. I'll be honest, I'll be straight up, is that a lot of this shit wouldn't be happening if people were paying attention. If they were paying attention to what goes on in their school districts and then what's paying attention to what's going on in their cities, a lot of people wouldn't be shocked. And that's one thing that really, really gets me, is that people are being shocked over things that we shouldn't be anymore. We shouldn't be shocked that, we're seeing all these badass storms, bad conditions, but hey, that's what it is. So I'm going to get up out of here for today. And here is Say Her Name, the Breonna Taylor anthem, because today is October 14th. It is George Floyd's birthday. Rest in heaven, King. A lot of people, I never, even when it came down to the George Floyd shit, I never really, I didn't see him as a hero. I saw it as somebody who was abused by the system. I saw it as somebody who needed help and didn't get any help, but instead was killed, because I know a lot of people will say his skin color. To me, it's not really about that. It's more that the Minneapolis Police Department took a life. And, a lot of people are saying that, especially when it comes to Charlie Kirk, that move was, MRT was legal, that they were trained to do that. That is partly true. But our courts never accepted that in Minnesota. They accepted that Derek Chauvin's knee killed him. That's just how it is. I mean, I can say all day that we all know he had drugs in the system. We know he had, bad heart. We know he had cholesterol issues. But the jury didn't find him guilty, Derek Chauvin, of nothing. You know what I'm saying? They found him guilty of behaviors that he had repeatedly done for years. So with that being said, I'm going to get up out of here. Here is Breonna Taylor anthem, and I will see y'all tomorrow, same time, same place.
This song is dedicated to the family of our beautiful sister, Breonna Taylor, and also to the families of every person that has lost a loved one or a friend to police brutality. Now, back home in Louisville, there's a chant that we've got down at Injustice Square, and we want you to sing it all over the world. Come on, Daria.